Now, the broccoli florets. I have boiling water right here. And let me push this to the back and bring the boiling water to the front here now. As in the preparation of vegetables video, you will see that this process that I'm doing right now with blanching the broccoli, in this particular case, has a couple of functions here. One of them is it makes the broccoli greener. When you drop it into boiling water and then shock it into ice water, which will stop the cooking process, this process, like I said, has like two functions for the soup. First, it makes the broccoli greener. And then when you puree the broccoli into the soup, near the end, it will make the soup greener, and it'll look like a nice green cream broccoli soup. So that's one function. The other function is, obviously, we're going to make the soup taste more like broccoli when we puree it in there. Okay, so we have boiling salted water. We have florets. We're dropping them in the water. And I've got some ice water here, which we will ultimately just drop the blanched broccoli in. Now, we're not cooking the broccoli till it's tender enough to eat, which is something you might do if you were making a vegetable for dinner. You might blanch it and then reheat it slightly in some butter and salt and pepper or something like that, or who knows how you make it, but you certainly can find out a lot about that in the preparation of vegetables video. But for right now, we're not going to cover that. So anyway, because the florets are soft to begin with, you don't really need to cook them to make them pureeable like you do the rest of those soup ingredients, which tend to be a little bit tougher. Broccoli florets are kind of soft to begin with. And when you puree them into the soup, you wouldn't even want them cooked a lot so that they would puree a lot, because you want that broccoli pieces left in there. So when it's not cooked that much, you can't puree it that well, and it consequently has that effect for you by not cooking it that much. So that's another function. Now, keep in mind that we're going to take some of these florets also and use them as garnish, whole or sliced, on top of the soup in the bowl for a final presentation on the soup, too. That would certainly be a third reason, correcting myself, that would certainly be a third reason to blanch this broccoli like this, to make it nice and green. And then you can help show your soup off when you're putting it together at the end. Okay, now that soup, that broccoli, let me get a towel to put this on here. Let me have a slotted spoon there, Louis, please. Or one of that, give me that Chinese thing there. Skimmer. Perfect. Now we'll take our broccoli and shock it into the ice water. Now, this would be a classic blanching of the veg technique that one would apply to, I could probably think of 100 vegetables that you can blanch like this. And that's that. See how nice and green that is? Now I'm going to show you how nice and green it is right next to some broccoli that has not been blanched, so you'll see exactly what I mean too. That stuff is green. Now one can make this even greener, but carefully they could put a half a teaspoon of baking soda in this boiling water just before you throw the broccoli in. It will make the broccoli even greener. The only problem with that is it has a tendency, the baking soda, to break the fiber of the vegetable down slightly. So you got to be careful how much you put in. But that's a trick that a lot of chefs use to make things really green for presentations. Okay, the soup's coming along well. I'm just going to add a pinch more chicken stock to that to make sure everything is covered up inside there, okay? Now, look at these two pieces of broccoli side by side. This one's blanched, but it's still basically kind of raw and hard, okay? And so they're shocked enough. That shocking in the ice water is absolutely essential for particularly your green vegetables, which have a tendency to lose the color if you don't stop the cooking process. So I'm going to take this broccoli now out of the ice water and set it aside, because in a very short time here we're going to puree some of these florets into the final soup. And in our particular case today, I'm going to use one of the recommendations that is in the soup itself, and that is to puree blue cheese into the cream broccoli soup and also garnish it with it. That's a nice little touch, and you can also use goat cheese for that if you want it also, and that's nice. We're going to put walnuts, chopped parsley, broccoli florets, and then I put a little slice of something red. You maybe put a little twist of a red pepper on there, or a little minced tomato or something like that. And the red against the green will help you a lot. We'll get there in a minute. Okay, let's bring the soup back to the forefront here. And this is almost pureeable. And rather than take a break, I'm going to talk to you while this is boiling about this whole cream soup process that one can apply to anything. So far, we sliced some onions and some celery, cooked it, then we threw our broccoli in. I'm going to refer to the broccoli as our primary product for the soup. Now, I can change that primary product to mushroom and just put mushrooms in there instead, or cauliflower and put cauliflower in there. In the case of cauliflower, I love cream of cauliflower with Parmesan cheese, but I'm not going to go into that. We have not enough time to talk about my likes. But so then you can put tomato in there, which we're going to do in the cream of tomato soup, and then, or potato. But the process so far is the same. Onions and celery cooked in some butter with a little bit of seasoning, put the primary product in. Then put the stock in. Then adjust it. In the case of the broccoli, we're using potato. We're adding a little thickening agent to it. Some soups, like the potato, for example, wouldn't need an addition like that. And then you may put a pinch of cornstarch or roux in there in one of them instead. So the variations on the thickening part change slightly, and the cook has some kind of freewheeling license in that area. Okay, and then continuing on with my formula and technique on making cream soups, which, by the way, I would just about call infallible and guaranteed to work for you. After thousands of soup preparations myself, I finally settled on this one process for making cream soups that always works. But then you're bringing it to a boil, and then typically you're pureeing it in the case of the examples that I've given, which are potato, tomato, mushroom, broccoli, and cauliflower. Process would all be the same as if we were making cream of broccoli. Then we would adjust the texture, and then we would season or add our additives. In the case of the broccoli, we're going to put blue cheese, cream, butter, salt, and pepper. Then garnish it with some walnuts. Maybe in the case of the potato, we'd be garnishing it with bacon, and or adding even mushrooms to it. So that part changes, which is the slight license to change the additives and flavors. But the process here now continues to be the same for all of them. We cooked the celery and the onions in the butter. We added the primary product. We put stock on it and made an adjustment for thickening if necessary. Simmered it until it was tender enough to puree. Then we're pureeing it, which we're about to do with this broccoli right here. Then we would put it back on the stove and adjust the flavoring and seasoning and finish it, which is a process we're going to do with the broccoli soup. Then all of these soups in effect are kind of the same. So when you know how to make one really well, you can apply all of this information to all the cream soups that you make. This is the significant aspect of today's lesson about the cream of broccoli soup. Obviously, cream of broccoli soup itself is worth taking a lesson for them. All right, we're going to take a look at this now. Louis, can you pull this ice water out for me now? Thank you. We're just checking to see if this is tender enough to puree. This is tender enough to puree.
John, show that again so we can
Okay.
camera on that.
I'm just taking out what I would consider to be the thickest piece of the stem and see if it's tender enough to puree. It's pretty darn close. It's close enough. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. And this is, let me have a medium-sized ladle too there, Louis. I'm going to put the broccoli soup into a taller cylinder when I use the puree stick, rather than a wide one like this pot is, thank you. Because the turbulence of the water will puree it faster, okay? That's a kind of a, it's obvious to me now, but there was a point when I first started cooking where I had to realize that it worked better that way. And so I'm just telling you that's something you should keep in mind when you have to puree something like this.